How to do ladder back jacquard. Hi everyone, Norman here. Today I want to show you a super invisible way to anchor your floats when doing stranded knitting, especially for large color blocks. By using a special trick, you create these ladders here on the backside of your project that will secure your floats and keep them from snagging. It's safe on the back and utterly invisible here on the front. Let's dive right into it. So, what is ladder back jacquard? Jacquard is just a French word for file or Norwegian knitting, so basically it's stranded knitting. But ladder back jacquard takes it one step further because through a setup row here, it introduces a second layer of knitting instead of trapping floats. So basically, it is a form of truncated double knitting. This is important. It's a form of truncated double knitting where you just create these single columns of double knitting. So this here is the chart for this swatch. And whenever you have a chart like this, where you have huge color blocks in a single color across multiple rows that are more than 5 stitches wide, then you can catch the floats using this ladder back jacquard method on the back side. So I am currently in this row here, and here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches side by side in the same color, and that is typically too long for a traditional float. So I will place a little increase here, an invisible increase here to start my second layer, and then I will continue this column here all the way to the top, and then here I only have 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches I need to bridge. That's something I can bridge with a traditional float. So here, right here, I will place an invisible decrease to re-merge this second layer with the rest of my fabric, and then I can continue using the standard stranded knitting technique. So let me show you how. So in the first step, you knit until you reach the very center of your color block or roundabout if it isn't symmetrical. And then you need to place an increase, and you have 3 options. So first option, you place a make one left, or rather a make one purl left. So you lift here the strand between these 2 stitches. You lift that back to your knitting needle so it leans towards the left. Then you bring both strands to the front, and then you need to purl into the back loop of that lifted strand using the color of your float. And this will be a little bit fiddly if you have blunt tips like these here. So you will have to kind of force things through, and then you purl that through the back loop, drop that. This will gain you an extra stitch. Looks like a mistake, but it won't be visible later on, and then you continue according to your chart. So here you gain this extra stitch, and we are going to use this stitch here to start our ladder. Your second option is using lifted increases. So you pick up here this loop here of the stitch 1 row below. We are here in the center, and you pick up this loop, bring it back to your knitting needle, then you bring both yarns to the front, and then you purl that extra loop using the color of your float again, drop that, bring both yarns to the back again, and continue according to your chart. Again, this will leave this one odd stitch here in between your color block. And your third option is using a backward loop increase. So again, you stop right here in what's going to be the center of your color block, and then you simply twist your yarn like so. Like so. See? Just a little twist, and string that to your knitting needle. That's all there is. So let's do that one more time. So you just twist the yarn and put that on your knitting needle. It's basically an e-cast on. And then you continue according to your chart. So we finished the first row, and we have these 3 stitches here neatly intersecting our color blocks. This is a flat project, so I will have to turn around and purl across until I come to my first ladder back stitch. If you have a project in the round, then please skip ahead a minute or two where I show how to handle things on the front side. So, in the first step, you knit according to your chart until you hit the very first ladder back stitch. And then you need to bring both yarns to the back. This is important. And then you need to knit into that stitch using only this yarn, making sure that you do not actually trap the other color. So see, here I knitted this, but here this yarn remains free. And then I bring both yarns to the front again and continue according to my chart. So let's do that one more time. Again, knit or rather purl according to the chart until you come to this ladder back stitch here. Then bring both yarns to the back and then knit into that stitch using the color of your float. Then bring both yarns to the front again and continue. Now important, remember in I'll always make sure that after you knitted or change colors, always stretch things out so that the floats aren't too constricted, and continue according to your chart. So one last time, I continue according to my chart until I come to the ladder back stitch. We used a different method to start the ladder, but the way to continue the ladder is always the same. So you bring both yarns to the back, then you knit into your ladder stitch using the float color, continue according to your chart, and don't forget to stretch things out. That was the wrong side row. So we are back on the front of our project, and if your project is in the round, then this is where you would have to join and continue after you placed the initial increase. So just like before, you continue according to your chart until you come to the first ladder back stitch. And now you need to bring both yarns to the front. Both yarns to the front, and then you need to purl into the ladder back stitch using only the color of your float. Knit one stitch, give this a good yank, and continue according to your chart. Let's do that one more time. So continue according to your chart until you come to the ladder back stitch. Bring both yarns to the front. Purl into the ladder back stitch using this the float color. Bring both yarns to the back. Continue according to your chart. Don't forget to give it a good yank. Oops. And continue until you come to the next ladder back stitch. One last time. knit up until you come to the ladder back stitch, bring both yarns to the front, purl into the ladder back stitch, bring both yarns back to the back, and then give it a good yank and then continue according to your, split the yarn here, according to your chart. If you have a round project, you can continue using the exact technique. If you have a flat project, you always need to switch. So if you are on the wrong side, then bring both yarns to the back and knit into the stitch. Continue according to your chart. Don't forget to yank. And from here, you basically continue as you see fit. Consider placing a little stitch marker to mark your ladder stitches, especially if you're knitting in the round. Depending on your chart or pattern, these stitches can be a bit confusing. I mean, you can identify them because they have this little purl bump here at its base. But if you get easily confused, just place a little stitch marker before or after the ladder stitch, and then you know, okay, this is a ladder stitch. And the second thing, depending on your project, your color block may get even wider yet. And then nothing prevents you from starting another ladder. So you could start another ladder here using the increase method of your choice. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to unravel that. So depending on your chart, you just start however many stitches, however many ladders you need. I tend to keep 4, maximum 5 stitches in between my ladders. So if you continue in this manner, those are the kind of results you should expect. So you get this lovely little ladder here in the back that is anchoring your floats, and it's still stretchy enough. At one point your color block will get narrow again. So if you take a close look here, I only have 2 stitches on either side of my central jacquard ladder stitch here, the one with the little purl bump, and that's when I typically decide to stop the ladder and reattach it to my knitting. Here's how. So here's by far the easiest way to do this. So when you come to your ladder, jacquard ladder back stitch, you simply knit it together with the adjacent stitch. So simply knit it together. That's already it. And if you knit it together in this order, you can see how the jacquard ladder stitch is getting pushed to the back, so it will not be visible on the right side. That's the first option. As an alternative, you can also use a left-leaning decrease. So in this case, you have to stop one stitch, or you have to stop when there's still one stitch before the ladder back stitch, and then you do an SSK, slip 2 knitwise, enter, and then knit these 2 together through the back loop. Again, you can see how the ladder back stitch here is kept in the back and isn't visible in the front. Of course, you can use whatever decrease you like. So a lot of people find that their SSKs look a little bit sloppy. So use an alternative like slip 1 knitwise, slip 1 purlwise, and then knit 2 together through the back loop, or knit 2 together left. So you enter knitwise, enter the second stitch through the back loop, grab the yarn, pull through the second stitch, drop, yank, and then knit. If you feel that offers or you typically see better results using such a technique, then kindly use that. I typically limit it to SSK and knit 2 together. So I quickly block this swatch so we can take a look at the results. We started our ladders with 3 different increases. Make one left, or rather make one purl left, the lifted increase and the backward loop increase. And as you can see, the backward loop increase is by far the neatest. The lifted increase leaves behind a little hole here. Same over here. You create a little hole. Depending on your gauge, it might not be that well obvious, but there it is. And for make one left, you create 2 stitches here. 2 stitches that are slightly smaller than the rest. So these 2 are definitely visible. I mean, you can definitely toy around with different lifted increases and different make one left. So make one purl right, make one purl left, make one right, and so on. You can definitely toy around with that, but I think the general tendency will remain. Here on the wrong side, we do have a big difference because for the backward loop increase here, this is not anchored. So I can actually put my finger in here, whereas here, this is perfectly anchored at the bottom. So this kind of will depend on the project, your preferences, and so on. But here, of course, you could possibly, I don't know, your fingers might get caught or whatever in the washing machine. There are tons of possibilities why you might not want this little pocket here and you rather want it closed. So this was the most invisible, but it's also, so to speak, the most dangerous. Now, if you are a person that handles all projects with care, it's a project where it's very unlikely that you catch the yarn. If these these floats aren't all that long, so you maybe just keep 6 stitches. These are 8 stitches, maybe you keep just 6 stitches in between and then you add another ladder. Then this might be the better option. Otherwise, I actually personally would say that the make one left version is preferable, even though it is the most annoying to knit. When it comes to closing the ladder, so we had knit 2 together, this was SSK and this was knit 2 together left. And even if I pull it apart, I don't know, I mean, I don't see a difference. Of course, you can slightly see it peeking through here, but it's the same for all the other stitches. There is another loop here wrapped around. So I think, well, at least here, according to my experiences, it really doesn't matter. Just pick whatever increase you feel looks best and typically and is easiest to knit, and typically that's knit 2 together. Now here at the end, I quickly want to revisit the idea that Ladder Back Jacquard is actually nothing else but double knitting. So here I'm about to start another of these color blocks. This would be a row where here in the middle I would actually add one of my increases to start my ladder, but instead I'm going to add a ladder after every single stitch. So I have one here in blue, then I'm gonna do lifted increases now because those are a little bit easier and faster to knit. And then I'm gonna add a ladder back stitch here. See what I'm doing? I'm adding a ladder back stitch here. Oops, I need to lift that back. I'm adding a ladder back stitch here after every single stitch. No, typically you wouldn't do that, but just for the sake of this experiment, I'm gonna do that. So it looks a little bit crazy now, but bear with me. So I quickly knitted across back and forth, and I'm here back at the place where I added all these crazy increases. And now watch my rhythm. I purl 1 stitch, and here we have a ladder back stitch. And if you're on the back side, I said, go to the back, knit 1 stitch, then bring both yarns to the front. Then I'm purling this as normal. Then here's another ladder back stitch. So I bring my yarns to the back, knit it, bring the yarn to the front, purl 1 stitch. And if you've ever done double knitting, then you know that, or then you should know that this here is exactly the double knitting, the double knitting rhythm. And the same is true here on the right side, where I said when you have a ladder back stitch, bring both yarns to the front and purl, yarns to the back, knit, yarns to the front, purl. So this is actually, so you're doing the exact same thing. The only thing that's different is that you, so to speak, started quite a lot of these ladders side by side, and we'll quickly take a look at what this gains you. And then if you continue like this here, you are actually, see, this is just stockinette stitch. The only difference is that here you have that single ladder, and here you have many ladders side by side. But you know, you did the exact same thing. And why is this actually important? Once you understand that jacquard, ladder back jacquard is actually just truncated or abbreviated or partial double knitting, you can use this to your advantage. So here, these ladder stitches, you can actually also knit them through the back loop. You can purl them through the back loop. You can do whatever you want. Let me show you. So here, when you come to your jacquard stitch, I said bring both yarns to the front, but that's actually half the truth. You bring this strand here to the front so it stays in front and wraps around it so you don't see the other stitch. What you do with this strand is entirely up to you. You can bring it to the front and then you can purl that stitch. However, you can also let it stay in the back and knit it. Then this ladder you create on the back side will be purl stitches. But in this case, I actually say, okay, we bring this here to the front, we bring both to the front, but now we are purling that here through the back loop. Saw that? And then bring both to the back. Let's do that one more time. So again, in reality, what you're doing is you're doing double knitting. You bring that strand to the front, because this is the yarn for the front and this is the next stitch for the front. That's why it needs to be a front. What you do with this yarn is entirely up to you, and you can, you know, knit it, purl it through the back loop. But we are going to now purl it through the back loop here, and then we bring both yarns to the back again. But actually, you are just bringing that yarn to the back. But because this is a knit stitch, you are also bringing this stitch to the back. If you want to know more about double knitting, I have a full tutorial on double knitting here on YouTube. I'll link it to you up in here. This is just something so you understand what you are doing here. So if you take a look here at the back side, setting aside that I that pulled out the yarn here, you can clearly see how those ladders, those jacquard ladders, are now suddenly a little bit more condensed in here, because here they often fall like, they open up like that, but by twisting the stitches, they are more condensed. In terms of stretchiness, you're actually not losing anything, I would say. But they look a little bit nicer. So it's very important to understand that you can, these ladder stitches, you can knit them, you can purl them, you can knit them through the back loop and purl them through the back loop and everything in between. Now here, this was just an experiment to show you that this is double knitting. This here can be very smart for the right kind of project. Here, typically not an option because you are creating sections in your fabric with a different gauge. So this here, and you can already see this happening, this here is bulging out a little bit. I mean, it's almost like a fancy, if you did it throughout the project, it would be a very fancy bubble stitch, but normally you wouldn't do this. Now here are a couple of tips. So when you have your chart and it doesn't already come with any, you know, highlights or so where you should add the letters, I would definitely do so. So use a pen, a pencil, whatever, and just mark where you want to place the letter, and then, you know, maybe do a little dot at the start at and at the end that you know, okay, here, this is where I need to increase, this is where you need to decrease. Because if you don't have that line, I mean, typically file charts are huge and can be confusing, and this is just, you know, making sure that you do not accidentally skip it. And of course, I already mentioned that you should consider adding stitch markers. Then the next tip is try to avoid floats that are longer than 4 or 5 stitches. I mean, this really depends a little bit on your gauge. Are you knitting with 2mm needles or 6mm needles? Is it a rustic sheep wool yarn with a lot of friction, or is it cotton like this one here? But in general, you want to keep these floats short enough so you can't, you know, that your fingers can't get caught or so, because if you put on the sleeves of your sweater or so, this will eventually happen. So these should be relatively short. 4 or 5 stitches is typically a good guess. And the last bit, ladder back jacquard, or you know, any form of stranded knitting or faille in general, looks best if you knit it using relatively small needles. So this yarn here recommends 4, can you see this? It recommends 4 to 5 millimeters. I am using 4 millimeters here because the larger your knitting needles are, the looser your gauge, and then these stitches here at the beginning and at the end of your ladders will become more visible. The more condensed your gauge is, the tighter your gauge is, the less likely it is for those stitches to peek through. I mean, the ladders themselves, they are separate. So even if you stretch things out, there's nothing visible, but you can see if I stretch things out, well, a little bit difficult. Here, see this peeking through and this peeking through. So try to knit with a relatively small needle. Again, this will depend a little bit on your yarn. Is it fluffy? This isn't fluffy at all. Does it bloom? Does it have a halo or something like that? Of course, I leave that up to you and your swatch. Anyway, that is how to knit ladder back jacquard. Please comment below if you still have any questions, and as always, happy knitting and enjoy the rest of your day.